All right, so I've got the wall of my mug. Obviously, there's no bottom on it. If you still see that seam, like you can see it right here, coming through to the inside, then you can just take your modeling tool and kind of pull that seam together. Just make sure it's nice and strong and well connected. Okay, might even need just a little bit of water and your thumb or finger to go over it. So double check that that's well connected all the way through on the inside before you attach that floor, just so that you can access from both sides. Okay. All right, I'll just set that aside. I've got a little piece of clay here. I don't really need a lot of clay for this step. Something I know, you know, something like a golf ball size piece of clay. I know this is more like maybe like a pool ball size, but something that I know when I flatten it out significantly, it will cover the base of this. Okay, so I'm just going to start by flattening it on my board, both sides. And you guys have made slabs before. So just a few reminders in making our slabs. You want to make sure that you keep that slab as even as possible all the way around. So from side to side to side to side. Okay. So when I'm flattening it out, I want to be really careful that I'm not slamming it down on the table as hard as I possibly can repeatedly, because what's going to happen is the edges are going to start to sink down and become a lot thinner, and the middle really isn't going to flatten much further. Okay. So I'm just getting it flat enough on both sides before I use the base of my palm. Just begin to sort of hit it out. So I'm starting in the middle and then I'm kind of working my way out, but not going to the very edge, because if I go down on the very edge, I'm going to just make a little thin, weak spot that I'll have to end up cutting off anyway. Okay, so again, palm of hand, hitting down in the middle and kind of working my way out and around. I just flip it every so often so that it doesn't stick to the board. And that gives me a chance to kind of feel how thick that clay is. Now my goal in flattening this clay out is to get it about as thick as the wall of the mug. So I rolled the slab thickness for your wall to be about 1/4 inch thick. Okay, I don't want to leave the bottom too thick, because ultimately once I attach that on here, if there's a ton of weight in this clay at the bottom, it just makes your mug feel really, really heavy. And when you go to use it, it ends up being more of a workout than it is just an enjoyable drinking experience. I'm going to try to flatten this out a little bit more. If you guys feel like you want to use your rolling pin to stretch that clay out, that's fine. I think I have a little more control over keeping that slab a consistent thickness when I'm just kind of hitting it out with my hand and continuously flipping it. So it's really up to you whether you want to use your dowel rod to roll it out or not. Okay, just flattening both sides a little bit more, smoothing it out, kind of feeling through it to make sure that it's an even thickness. Okay, so that's about right in terms of how thick my clay is there. I'm trying to, again, match it up to the thickness of the wall of my mug. Okay. I'm going to smooth it out with my smooth metal rib, because as I said when I gave you the demo yesterday, it's not just about smoothing the surface and cleaning it up, it's also about strengthening it. So I just stretch that clay a whole lot to make this little pancake slab here. So I want to tighten up those clay particles, pull them back together, and make sure that everything is nice and strong and holds together well. Okay, you might notice if you've got a few little air bubbles in your slab, that's fine. Just kind of poke them out with your needle tool and then go right back over it. That's a stubborn bubble. Okay, and that should help squeeze the air out and close that clay back together. Okay, so once I've gotten that far, I'm going to take my mug, I'm just going to set it right down on top of my slab. And what I would suggest is just using a tool to trace around this first, and then you can come back and cut that base out. Sometimes if you put your mug wall down and then you start cutting around it, you accidentally end up cutting into the wall. You know, not intentionally, of course, but you know, accidents do happen. So I would just start by tracing, and then you can remove this completely. You've got your outline, and then you can cut that out from there. And there's my fettling knife. And when you're cutting out of a slab, I think it's easiest to cut section by section. That way you don't end up getting your wrist or your arm that's cutting in sort of an awkward position, trying to cut all the way around in one fell swoop. And notice I'm just holding it so that my index finger is guiding my cut as I'm turning it around. Okay. Now, again, we've got this sharp edge left behind after cutting through that slab. I'm just going to take my fingers and I'm going to gently pinch around that edge just to soften it a little bit. Not trying to thin it out necessarily too much, but just giving it a softer, cleaner edge so that when I go to attach it to the base of my mug itself, I've got less cleanup work to do. Okay. All right, so from there, it's probably pretty evident what I'm about to do. Score and slip. So I'm just gonna score around the inside edge of that slab I just made. Wish I could double time in real life, you know. This would be one of those moments I would take advantage of it. So make sure that you're getting nice, deep little score marks. The plastic clay is easier to score because it's softer. Okay. This is the bottom of my mug. I'm gonna also score that ring around it. And you know, before you do this, or maybe even before you build the wall of your mug, you guys might want to rehydrate your little cup or bowl of slip so that you have that ready to go. You can certainly use the water in your spray bottle and just create that slip on the surface, but some of you might feel better actually having some slip at the ready to add into your scored areas when you're connecting these pieces together.
How did you keep that mug piece so plastic?
This piece?
Yeah.
So this is more at the leather hard stage. Okay. So I wrapped it up around the can. I kept it together overnight, but I made sure to wrap it up pretty tightly in my plastic bag. So some of the moisture got absorbed through the newspaper, through the newsprint. But for the most part, it did stay pretty wet. Okay, add some water, both pieces. And then I'm going to go over it again just to make that slip on the surface. Mix it all up. And be careful that you don't score on the outer edge of your mug wall. I mean, we can always clean it up, but it makes it easier if you just do it right on top there. Same thing with this little slab for the base. Okay. All right, so I've got my base there. I'm gonna just turn my mug right side up, kind of place it back down where it lines up. Okay, and then I'm just gonna give it a little pressure, little twist. It's good to work on top of the board for this because the board is really absorbent. So when you pull it up, the base should just come right off the board. Okay, now you've got a little bit of extra down here. I like to do a quick roll around with the base of my mug just so I make sure that there's good pressure getting the base well attached to the wall. And you can see there's a little bit of that clay kind of sneaking out from there. That's fine. I can go back and trim that up later. But again, I just want to make sure that I get a really good connection between the wall and the foot. Okay. And then on the inside, you'll see that there's some slip down there around the inside edge. I would just say take your brush and kind of go in and around that seam and really kind of push that clay together. Okay. And that should seal it nice and tightly. But again, it's really important you get good pressure before you do that between the base piece and the wall piece. Okay. Otherwise, you might experience a little bit of cracking down there at that seam. So it is important to score and slip, but pressure is equally as important. Okay. All right. So I want to let this set up a little bit before I come back and take care of, you know, smoothing out or trimming away any excess from the foot. You can see there's just a little bit kind of sticking out around the base where it got pinched together. So I'll leave that until later once this is a little more set up, once it's a little more leather hard along with the wall of the mug.